is a variable. So what is this variable? A characteristic of an item or an individual that will be analyzed using statistics. So what are the characteristic of an individual? Columns, right? So these were the columns. So these columns are called as variables. So you will be analyzing, so you will be manipulating all these variables. So variables are something which we can manipulate. So if you get a data and it is a combination of different variables of a different data types, this means that we have different sets of columns, different columns, right? So that is how your database is structured for. So hence, like analysts say that they are analyzing the data. So if they say they are analyzing the data, which is nothing but they are analyzing the variables. So variables, so these are variables. So math, science, and English, physics are variables. And inside each variable, we have records. So data is a combination. The whole data set is a combination of different variables. So now we know what variable is, right? Now we know what variable is, what the data is. So let's get into the types of different variables. So if you could see, so if it is what actually the different variables are, let's get into that part. So types of variables. So there are two types of variables. So one is dependent variable and another one is independent variable. So let's get into the independent variable part. An independent variable, sometimes called as like experimental or a predictor variable, or it is a variable that is being manipulated in an experiment in order to observe the effect of dependent variable. So if you see, so this is a basic example. So there is columns called amount of water, amount of fertilizer, and height of a plant. So these were the three columns which we have. Okay. So taking water. So if it is little, if it is much, fertilizer. If it is little, if it is much. So what could be the height of a plant, short or long? Sorry, I have been writing the other side. So if you know, these were the things which we are looking into. A simple example, right? So sometimes what I said is your independent variables are the stuff which are used to predict your outcome variable, which is height. So with the help of, so in the same example, if you talk about height, so your height of a plant is a dependent variable. So there are many variables here, right? Two variables. One is amount of water. Imagine a spreadsheet with the amount of water as one column, amount of fertilizer as another column, and finally height of the plant as your third column. So the dependent variable will be a y variable and the independent variables are x variables. So changing the x variables, you will have a change in y variable, right? So this is the simple thing. So if you put little water and little fertilizer, right? So your plant will be short, obviously, y variable will be. So short or long. So if you put much water and much fertilizers also, it will be short, right? Whatever, if you put it excessive, it will be giving a bad result. So if you put a little water with much fertilizers, I really don't know how to grow plants. I'm just giving you an example. That may give you a strength to increase the height of the plant. So these are your x variables. These are your y variables. So we shall be manipulating. So manipulating, man, come on. So these were the things we will be manipulating in an experiment to observe the effect on our y variable, which is a dependent variable, or it could be called as outcome variable. I'm just giving you a simple example so that you could understand. So the same thing. So hence height is dependent on these two independent variables. So I guess you got what actually a dependent variable is or independent variable is. So let's take a simple example. So now tell me, so taking from this part, so what are independent variables and what is dependent variable from our loan prediction? So we have loan prediction example, right? So we are working on that one, yes or no. So tell me, anyone, so what is dependent variable and what is independent variable? Perfect. Loan status is y and all other variables are your independent variable. So your loan status is somewhat dependent on your independent variables. If you change these independent variables, your loan status will be changed from yes to no or no to yes, or what is the probability to getting no or yes. So now we got to know what is dependent and what is independent, right? So let's get into the variables part. So we got to know what actually population is, what actually sample is, and what are types of variables. One is dependent and another one is independent. So the variables, and now we're getting into different varieties of variables itself. So let's get into that part. So as said, so these were independent variables and this is dependent.